kiddos. I hope you're pumped up. I hope you're having a really good Friday night, because this is a really, really rare occasion. In fact, I think the last time I did it, I've only done it one time, and it was for the Montanist episode, where it was a double doozy. So we're going to be doing that today, talking about Counterfeit Revival. We're going to talk about the new Apostolic Reformation, also known as garbage, wreaking havoc all across the land. Wreaking havoc, all sorts of problems with these enthusiasts. Big time bad. I said earlier that I was going to do that. I said earlier that I wanted to have a second program today because I missed Monday on Reason and Theology, mega bum. I missed Monday morning. Holy cow, I totally forgot. I missed Monday morning with Terror of Demons. I missed Monday morning at Reason and Theology. I missed Wednesday morning over on Meaning of Catholic. And I'm like, I gotta make up for it. I've got a lot of talking left to do. And to be quite frank, I had to get my mind off of something really terrible. Something really terrible happened. We had a game today between the JV and the dads. And your boy, White Chocolate, did badly. Not just bad, I'm talking wicked bad. I'm talking the worst bad you can imagine. There was, it didn't help. On top of it all, icing on the cake, because I felt pretty good out of the gate. I was doing awesome. I'm weaving and I'm winding all through these chairs. And I get down, I make that hoop. I run back down, make another hoop. I'm going down at the end. He's behind me. I'm ahead, my son. We're in a battle. And all these people are watching. And I sit there, I shoot up one three-pointer. I brick it. I shoot up another three-pointer. I airball it. Then I shoot up another three-pointer. And as it's in the air, my son shoots a half-court and in. And everybody, the whole crowd, yay! The whole crowd went nuts. Went absolutely nuts. It was insane. It was, it's this thing. So I felt really badly. Then we had a three-point competition. Now, here's the deal. And this is just a true thing. My son can attest to this, right? Today was bizarre. I'm sitting there, and you go up for the shots, and you're shooting, and I tied for the worst of the dads. But I think mine was worse, because at least the dude bricked more than I did. I mean, I'm like, what is wrong with me? Seriously, what is wrong with me? I think that, quadriplegic guy on the street corner would have done better at the three-point competition. He's like, this guy's real bad. I'm better than him. I'm like, I know. So I said, look, I simply have to be able to go out there, and I have to be able to just growl into microphones for a little bit. So, all right, real quick, Dan P in the comment section. I'll keep this comment section. This is probably going to be a little bit lighter. We don't have as many people tuned in. That's okay. It's a surprise. So hopefully they'll be able to see it tomorrow, because it's gonna be a good one, I think. And so, well, they're all pretty good. They're all pretty good. By the way, did you guys hear, guys and ladies, did you hear the episode earlier? I hope you did. It was Guns Akimbo. It was Guns Akimbo right out of the gate, just blam, 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 just going to town. And we had to. Oh, we had to. And so it was a lot of fun. Actually, we went back. And sometimes I'll listen, to see how the sound was and things like that, and see how the color grading was and all that. And I'll tell you, we were all just chuckling. We were all like, okay, wow, man, this is on fire. Speaking of on fire, my mega hot half Korean beauty queen wife is in the house. So everybody, please say hi to Angela. She's in the comments. I'll just pop it up here for just a minute. There we go. Look at that. Hello. How are you doing there, sweet thing? How are you doing? I always love when you're around. Whenever I see my wife over there and I see, that little picture and I see her name in blue, that tool next to it, I kind of sit there and it warms my heart every time. I love that woman, I do. We've been together for a little bit. We've been together. We've been through some stuff. And now we did not go through any of this stuff together, okay? The stuff that I'm going to be talking about today, I have some background with this. This is actually one of those things that I actually have a little bit of background with that, with the new Apostolic Reformation, because there was a time And I was telling my kids this yesterday. We were going through videos, and I was showing them all this stuff, and they were like, "Man, this stuff's really crazy." And they're like, "These guys think they're apostles." And I said, there was a time where there were people in this small church. I went to a church called Penfield Assembly, and there were people in that church and other churches locally that were convinced that I was an apostle. And they would tell me that. In fact, I don't think I ever would have even gone to Bible college at all, were it not to have been for people like them. I mean, anything that I do now, I've studied theology, I've studied apologetics, church history, and I wouldn't have done any of that probably, strangely enough, if it were not for the influence of people who were talking out of their minds about who I was and what I was supposed to do. And there were these pastors that were into it, and they were like, they really believed that. And they're telling a young guy, I was like 18, 19 at the time. That's not a good thing to tell young guys like that, real charismatic figures and everything, coming out of drug culture and stuff. It's just not, regardless of what's really going on. And not just because it's, obviously raging nonsense and heresy, but just psychologically, what it did was really stunning. And what it did over and over and over again, the impact that I saw, right? The impact that I saw that this movement had on churches and in the end, Penfield Assembly, that small little church that I grew up in. We knew people who built that thing, It's one of those small churches kind of out in the woods and stuff. It has when it's going good and they think, they're taking over the world, it's like 250 people. And they're like, "Man, look at this revival. It's amazing." It's a lot of church hop, and that's how most Protestant churches, that's how they grow, to be quite frank. Most of them, it's not new conversions. That's a really rare thing. You might actually see that during the times of like the Jesus movement and stuff. And a lot of that's reversion. And that's, hey, better that than not, right? But the idea that people are trying to at least get their life back together, especially after, the LSD stuff in the 60s. So better that than peyote land. But the thing is, well, maybe that's debatable. I don't know. It depends, I guess, But the thing is that, this church, maybe 250 people or so, just went right down the toilet. Right down the toilet. Yeah. So who's the superest apostle? The superest apostle. Oh boy. Let me see. What would that be? I just had it. Hold on. New Apostolic. Here we go. New Apostles movement. Yeah, is it Harmon? Is that his name? The prophecy for today. He's got that book. He's got a book about it. The New Apostolic Reformation. Oh, it's even right there. It says super apostles right next to it. You go on Google. You go and look up. I have a new apostles movement, and it says super apostles. There's actually a book called God's Super Apostles. Okay. Oh, yeah. Let's get this guy up here. Let me make sure I got this guy. Bill Hammond, not Harmon. Hammond. I've only seen his name in print. I've never talked to him or anything like that. But he wrote a bunch of he wrote a bunch of books. Okay, so some of his books are like talking about a prophecy for today. Some of them are talking about the prophetic movement. Some of them are talking about personal prophecy, and it trains you essentially on how to do it because these folks, he really believes that he believes he's the bad mamma jamma. That's what he believes. Prophets in the prophetic movement. God's prophetic move today. You'd think these prophet guys, man, that they would have done better with the covers of their books. It's their books that you see the cover and you're like, man, that's not very, very appealing. Not very appealing. Charisma Magazine, Bill Hammond, a prophetic legacy in the making. Probably not. Well, I mean, yeah, he's got his legacy. It's not necessarily something you want to be down with. It's a kind of sickness that you want to avoid, generally speaking. And so, but he's one of those guys. I've talked before about James Maloney. Right? I call him Phony Baloney. That guy. He's one of those in that movement. And he brought that movement to Christ for the Nations, where I went to school. He brought that movement to where they expanded their third year program. Because their ministry, main thing was pastoral ministries. And then they had missionary. stuff. And I think maybe youth, I don't remember. But then they brought in this idea saying, look, we got this prophet, and this prophet's talking about, this place is going to be cranking out apostles for the latter rain and all that jazz. Of course, it didn't work out. It tends to be the case, though, doesn't it? Doesn't that tend to be the case? Let's see. Lucas Witten says, Paleocrat, you got to talk about the nameless and faceless generation prophecy from Paul Kane. I don't know what that is. You've shown me something new. I have no idea what that is. Let's see here. Sam, good to see you, by the way, Sam. And by the way, Sam, were you the one in the comment section under today's video? There were some really great comments under that video about people who've been influenced by my work over the years, even going back as far as, back in 2009, 2010. Or I guess it'd be a little bit later than that. Be a little bit later, but they, being influenced by my work. And in fact, from that day forward, no longer entertaining the idea of sedevacantism. It was over, right? Nail in a coffin for them. And that argument has been solid ever since. In fact, we'll be talking more about that in the future. There's a book that I'll be going through talking about it. Let's see here. Dan P. BFR, interesting how some Protestants totally disavow hierarchical titles while others use extra titles. Most Reverend Deacon Apostle Dr. Phil MD. Oh, man. Isn't it true? Isn't it true? Some of them do, and they got to overdo it. There's no more just Reverend. Nothing like that anymore. It's Most Reverend Deacon Apostle Dr. so-and-so. Oh, man, that's funny. That's a good one. Okay. Who said they're glad to hear me twice? Oh, you get to hear me twice. Yeah, my wife, you get to hear me all the time. You do get to hear me. Jedediah, what's up, homie? Glad to see you. Rachel, of course, I'm always excited. And thank you, by the way, for being there. For those who were a part of the Afterglow show, because this would be my third time being on today. The second time was the Afterglow show. And so I just want to say thank you for being there. It was awesome, wasn't it? I want to give a real quick praise report about that before we move on. So here's the thing, I've talked before, and I said this in the Afterglow. So for those who are there, forgive me for repeating myself, but it's important. I think you'll agree. Is that, when we began the show, one of the things that I emphasized was the model that we use. I said people in this line of business, a lot of times they have this idea about their own importance and who they are, what their role is, how they're really setting the agenda. And there is truth to this. They are popular people. They're people who influence others. They will get emails. I'm small peas compared to these guys. And yet I get emails and DMs and calls all the time. So you sit there and you say, all right, well, imagine if you're much bigger. And now the tendency, though, is to hyperinflate that and to begin speaking, especially in models where they're talking current events. So they're waking up every day, they're finding new topics to talk about, and they're really just winging it. They're well-read, most of them, well-read, well-versed. Some of them have degrees and stuff. And so that's what they enjoy. They're doing an otherwise good job at this. But they put themselves at risk when they throw it out there to do improvisational stuff where they're just off the cuff, right? Flying off the cuff every single day in the moment. And they're thundering with authority. So they're going out there, they're thundering with authority. They're leading the charge. They're these generals, right, among the lay apostolates, but they're winging it. And a lot of times it comes down to the leader. And part of that's the mediums. It doesn't, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, none of those places really foster an environment where you're going to have community, where people really connect. I mean, you can in the comments here, the live stream, but it ends. So once it's over, it's over. And there's very little you can do other than just simply type stuff out. You're not sending pictures to each other. You're not sending videos. You're not DMing. You're not doing any kind of voice chat or video chat. There's no video group chat. There's no nothing. So all of those things that would help to build a community that's a more immediate interaction with each other. These mediums don't really foster that. But these are the mediums these guys have committed themselves to. So they really don't have it's difficult to build a community in that way. So it really lends itself to focus on the one person, on the person talking into the microphone. And I said, I want nothing to do with that. I don't want anything to do with that. And I said, in fact, I made a rule. And my rule was, yes, I am the Kaiser. It's true. But I think everybody's able to say that with a little bit of a chuckle. Right? And there's somebody said, take me to your leader. They'd be like, well, I guess he's kind of the leader. And I'd be like, what? Me? No, I think it's that person over there. And they're like, well, me? And they have no clue. And I said, the only time I would ever invoke that rule where just I come down hard would be essentially, by and large, it would be if we ever got to a place where people were trying to make me a leader. And I'd say, no, I'm taking the leadership role to then get rid of everybody. You're excommunicated. You're done. You're out. And then I would go back into the group. Just blend right back in. Because I learn more from you than you could ever possibly learn from me. Because there's way more of you than there are of me. And so I'm able to learn from all of you. And in the group chat over at the Wolfpack, that has been just such an awesome experience. And I didn't put the link in here. If somebody can put the link in the comments, that'd be great. It's just t.me/the Wolfpack chat. That's all it is. One word, the Wolfpack chat. The letter T, .me/the Wolfpack chat. If you could put it in there, it'd be really helpful. So, but we get these events and stuff, and it's really been awesome to see how people come together. I say all that because we had some really awesome situations recently, where people, they talk about, one guy, he shared a video where he's letting all the people that he knows, he has his own kind of thing going too. And he was talking about taking a knee for Jesus. And he said, look, you got to take a knee for Christ the King. And he posted on the chat saying, I've taken that, I've stolen it from you. There's no stealing it. We're all in this together. It's the idea that we're that has saturated that idea of keep on keeping on, keep on trucking, never give up, keep on smiling. Remember, you're going to die. Dream bigger thoughts, all these things. So that was something that affected him. Another person was talking today about the various ways that this show has affected him. And then you have another person and two people in the chat talking about how the program kept them from sedevacantism and how it was a really big deal that this is the method of re-evangelization and apologetics that we invoke here, the kind that we utilize, was extraordinarily helpful. And not just to keep them from that, but also to help them in their witness to other groups that tend to be on the far fringe of enthusiasm, even cults. And that really helped them. But there was a certain somebody who had said that their sister was involved in tarot. Okay, tarot cards, crystals, New Age stuff. Raised as a Protestant, but got into that stuff and was even on TikTok making videos, right? And that they came in and we were talking because the conversations about word faith and New Age, the conversation came up in one of the afterglows. Well, I didn't know, I'm like, I know the topic, but I don't know of resources that would be best suited for that particular thing. Well, somebody in the chat did, Haley. She did. She had a really good video. And she said, this is a really excellent video on what this is, what it does, everything else. So she shared it. Well, we got a report today. And it made Haley cry. It almost made me cry. Because that man came back and said, I just wanted to tell you guys, I gave that video to my sister. My sister threw away her tarot cards. My sister threw away the crystals, the stones, and has brought the Bible back out and began going through to figure out, where did I go wrong? What did I do? How did I get from this place where I loved Jesus, where I read the scripture, where I went to church, and somehow found myself way out on the fringe of making tarot reading TikToks, surrounded by magical stones, magical crystals. How did that happen? And he just wanted to thank us. And I have to say us, because that is how that happened. I didn't come down a mountain with some magical link. It was everybody doing their part. It was people saying, well, I'm familiar with this. I've had experience with that. I've watched videos over here with this. I've got a link. I've got a video. I've got a book, whatever. But that they are able to draw from their own experience and their own interests, their own gifts and talents that God gave them to contribute to the pack. And I have to only hope and pray that one day that woman will be part of it. So keep her in your prayer, okay? Right here, Rachel says, I've just tuned in on TV tonight. My husband is seeing you for the first time. Go Paleocrat. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. What's up, man? It is good to know that you're watching the show. Yeah, your wife's really cool, by the way. Yeah, she speaks very highly of you. She speaks very highly of you. Kevin says, good evening, Jeremiah. Good evening to you, buddy. Good evening to you. Let's see. Ray says, aha, I've made it to a live stream. Hi, Wolf Queen. Dude, I like that, man. Wolf Queen. And look at the two little wolves. Yeah, they're all cute. Yeah. The only difference is if that one of those wolves was really me, it would have the hearts and the eyes and the little kissy face with the little kiss floating over to his wife. And his wife rolling her eyes. Oh, come on now. They say, yeah, I know. She likes that. Jedediah says, I'm cooking fish and watching Paleocrat. How much more Catholic can I get right now? That's actually a very high bar. So you'll, yeah. And you're making me hungry, buddy. You're making me hungry, homie. Yeah, Jesse James. That's the guy I was talking about earlier. Yeah. Very, very, and by the way, Jesse, you're the man, buddy. You're the man. Very, very grateful for you. Ray says, you can do it wearing a monocle. Dude, yeah, I have the monocle now. I don't know if all you guys saw it. If you guys missed it, here, check it out. And I hope you don't mind that we're just chilling here for a minute. Okay? Check it out. Let me get it in here. Okay? So, right here. So, this monocle, it's got this, like, ridge. So, you put the ridge on there, and it will keep it pretty well locked in. You got to kind of get used to, like, pressing it a little bit. Like, a little bit under your eyebrow. Whoop. Yeah, it's not entirely the easiest thing in the world. You know, I don't know if this is it. I have to get one with serrated edges. Yeah. That might be better, like off to the side a little bit. Yeah. So, but I've got this monocle. I've got it. My wife, she's like, you got to have it. You got to have it. I said, oh, of course I do. Yeah. So got that monocle. All right. Let's see. Yeah, and the one with serrated edges, they say it stays better. They say it stays better than that. Okay. Always thought it was weird for people to call themselves an apostle, even when I was charismatic. You know, I agree with you. And it was weird for me when they said that to me, you know, because I was talking to a pastor. And he started to become convinced of this. And a lot of times it's kind of gradual, you know. And sometimes, you know, because a lot of these pastors are denominationally affiliated. And most of their denominations have no interest in getting involved in that jazz. So they're like, I don't think so. I don't, you know, we got modern apostles and prophets. Yeah, you know, it's one thing to say that you do prophecy like during a Pentecostal service or something. You know, you're delivering a message from the Lord. You hear that all the time. You got the rundai, hundai, shundai stuff going on real loud, and everybody's quiet and calms down. And then somebody does an interpretation, which, of course, as we've talked about already, is not an interpretation at all. At best, even if it was true, it would be a gift of prophecy, right? They're not able to disentangle prophecy from interpretation in their model. It's what happens when you're mixed up in the gobbledygook of experience. That's your final authority is experience. You end up getting all sorts of messed up, right? All sorts of messed up. But most people don't want to. The idea of taking a prophet and saying that that's just their function 24/7. That they're walking around, you know, lathered up in the anointment. Yeah, that's a different ball game altogether. A different ball game altogether. Dan P asks, are you familiar with John G. Lake? His Divine Healing Technician tape series is the inspiration and half-hidden manual for a lot of high-profile Protestant healers. No, I have not. And this is why I really love that people mention stuff like this in the chat and why they go to the Afterglow show, because I write these things down. And I'll go through and make sure to keep a note of this. I'll check it out. I may buy a book. I try to do that. I try to read first original source material for these people so that I'm not reading just about them, but also familiarizing myself with them themselves and hearing their arguments and making my own kind of judgments based on that. So I'm really grateful for all of that. But no, I'm not familiar offhand with John G. Lake. But again, thank you for that. Conan says, Black Protestants love titles. I wasn't going to say that, but it's true. It's like, the idea of the first lady even, the wife of the pastor, or in that case, the bishop, or the reverend bishop, deacon, pastor guy, So they like to put them all up there like that. Yeah, a lot of them. I've seen a whole bunches and bunches and bunches. Let's see here. Nice to see you there, Craig. Nice to see you there, Wittershins. Phil Gonzalez Wolf. It's nice to see you, Phil. I'm always happy to see you, buddy. Yeah. Conan says Zarathustra came down the mountain. Yeah. That's the whole thing. They're all mountain men. You got monocle men and mountain men. I always kind of, I don't talk as much right now about the mountain man. I used to say, that you come down the mountain like this and you've got your tablets of paper mache. I'm gonna put together a lexicon. There'll be a Paleocrat Diaries lexicon with all the different phrases that have come out of this show. I mean, we're just, like I said, it's just a factory of this stuff all the time. So we got to keep up with it. Yeah. And serrated monocle. I'm not talking like a Rambo knife. I'm not talking about a Rambo knife. Yeah, for Lenten mortification. No, it's just ridged. That's all. It's just ridged, and that way it keeps it in serrated. You're like, ha ha. It's like you got little droplets of blood, and you're like, that guy's really hardcore about it. He is really, really hardcore about it. Oh. Yeah, good. Putting a video together, relaxing with the family, life is good. Rachel says, love the monocle. You really surprised my husband when you reacted to my message. What is that, dead chuffed here? What's chuffed? What's chuffed? Robert Duvall, the movie The Apostle. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So all right, we're gonna move on here. We're gonna move on. I'll keep track of the chat as we go along. This isn't gonna be. I'm hoping this won't be super long, because it is. It's just the foreword. That's all it is. It's the foreword to this book. Okay. Looking for God in all the Counterfeit Revival. Looking for God in all the wrong places. Now, we're going to go at Counterfeit Revival. We're going to go through this book. It's another by Hank Hanegraaff. He did really well on both of these, because we've been going through Christianity in Crisis, talking about the word faith movement, okay? So Hagen, Copeland, Benny Hinn, all of those guys. And this right here, this is like Brownsville Revival. I don't think this has been, okay, it's expanded and updated, but I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe he's got some of the newer revivals. What is it? Is it Lakeland? What is it? So you might have them in there. Maybe, I don't know. But I know that when I read it, the first time I read it, it was in college, of all places, the Pentecostal one that I used to go to. They was really into this type of stuff. Like, they were really hardcore about it. And I ended up reading it. They didn't like that. It ended up getting me in trouble. It got me in trouble. Yeah. And so, let's see here. And now everybody knows, is it chuffed or is it choofed? What is it? I'm thinking it's chuffed. Yeah. Everybody in the comments, they're like, I'm chuffed now. I like chuffed now. What is this? How did I miss the memo? How did I miss the memo on this? You guys are blowing my mind right now. Yes. Yeah, some Protestants understand apostle as a function, not an office, based on Ephesians 4, and even treat it as a kind of personality test. That's one of the things that we'll talk about. And yes, they do. That's I think the reason why there were so many people at our church and other churches in the area that were familiar with who I was and what I was doing at the time. I mean, I was preaching to people on the streets. We'd have, sometimes upward 15, 20 guys up in my room at my home. I lived with my parents, and we had a room. We called it the upper room, and every night you could walk by and you either heard Rich Mullins or Keith Green or chant. We'd play chant. You'd smell incense. I'd burn incense in there. There'd be candles in there, and we'd be praying in tongues, laying hands on each other, laughing in the spirit till 3 a.m, baptizing people in the lake across the street, 3 a.m. I mean, it's just true. And tons of people, lots and lots of people. It changed the face of schools. So there were people back then that they just thought This is like, he's got an anointing on his life. And so to them, a personality like that, a figure like that, going around doing what I was doing, to them that was apostolic. And it was, the timing of it was perfect because it was really kind of when the new apostolic movement was really getting some legs. Yeah, Conan says, when I was in the Word of Faith movement, I was talking to an English professor, friend of mine, about it, and he paused for a moment and said, "You sound like Zarathustra coming down the mountain." Yeah. Crazy, man. I didn't know that. I don't know why I forgot that. I think you've mentioned that before. Oh, it's chuffed. Okay, so am I doing it right? Chuffed. Yeah. Okay. What does it mean? What does it mean? You guys are killing me over here. You are killing me over here. And yes, anointing equals personality. Yes. If you have a charismatic personality and you're a dominant figure and you go out there and you have authority in your voice, you're an apostle or a prophet, right? Or an evangelist. I mean, they'll lump you in with that kind of a ministry anyway. If you have leadership skills, you add to that the ability to network with leadership skills. You've got yourself an apostle. Okay. All right. So this foreword, I want to see the guy's name, so I can just tell you. I'd like to actually talk to him. Tom Stipe. He's the pastor of Crossroads Church of Denver. This was written back in 1997. Serving on the board of directors. Well, hold on a second. Hold on a second. This had been so chilled out, I almost forgot. I literally was so chilled and in the moment, just having a good time, that I totally forgot something extraordinarily important. And that's that. All right, come on now. We've got to do better than this. We got to get this place bumping. Are you on Twitter? Are you on Facebook right now? Right? How can you share the link to this show? Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let people know that you're tuned in. Let them know that this is the super cool, awesome way in 2022 of spending your Friday nights, at least on March 4th. On March 4th, they're like, dude, there's nothing better. And they're like, well, I want to go to a party. And you're like, this is the party. You need to be here. Stat right now. So go blast that shofar on Twitter. Blast that didgeridoo on Facebook. Get that hammered dulcimer out over there on Instagram. And let the world know that Paleocrat Diaries is on the air. That your boy, the Kaiser, the one and only OG, Jeremiah Bannister, is pumped and ready to rock. And why? Because we are going to be entering the octagon of church history. We're going to be entering the octagon, going up fist to cuffs, right up against super apostles, apparently. Super apostles. Oh, no. We're going to be dealing with them. Oh, they're new, all right. Yeah, they're real new. They're so new, they're mentioned, in the scripture 2,000 years ago. We've been dealing with those weirdos for a very, very long time. But we're going to expose them. And we're going to talk about it in a personal way, engaging in the chat. So if you've got friends that you think need to hear this type of thing, and I know you do, right? A lot of people need to hear it. In fact, last time I checked, there's about 7 billion people on the planet. There's a lot of people. You got to let them know. Let's get this thing going right now. Yes, Hallelujah in the comments, moderating. She's amazing. And what is she doing? She's letting loose all of the carrier pigeons. We've got people, Jedediah. He's over there with his smoke signals, letting everybody know the four corners, north, south, east, and west, that we're rocking out on March 4th, Friday night. This is the way to keep those lights on, keep the lights on in the brain, the flame burning live in the heart, and becoming better and better all the time. Better in our own faith, knowing why we believe what we believe, knowing why we don't believe what we don't believe, and knowing how best to connect with people who don't share our convictions so they can come into the church. That's what we do here. That is what we do here. And so very, very grateful for all of you. Oh, yes. And James says, I shared it on YouTube and Twitter. Thank you very much, buddy. Thank you very much, man. People, it's funny because we, people are like, oh, I could support your channel and you got a Patreon. Man, I'm more interested in people just sharing likes and stuff. I mean, I'm not going to turn down the load. I mean, you want to, shove my pockets full of cash. I'm not going to turn it down, but I'm not sitting here. I'm not panhandling. I'm trying to help people to better their lives. I'm trying to better my own life, familiarizing myself with, why do I believe what I believe? Why do I not believe what I don't believe? What are pitfalls that I can avoid, potentials that I can pursue? And that's what I try to do here. And so, and I try not to just follow in my own, I do talk about these things, and there is an improvisational quality to the show. But at the same time, I'm genuinely trying to walk in the footsteps of people who filled much bigger shoes than I can. I don't put all the eggs in the basket of my own brain. Trust me, that'd be a bad idea. It'd be a real bad idea. Yeah, and Sarmad says that he was a former tongue-speaking heretic. I bet you there's a bunch of people like that, man, that have gone through that. Believing in all sorts of heresy, speaking off in tongues and stuff. All right. Yeah, light those beacons. Light those beacons, Kevin. It's like, what movie is that, man? Where is it A Quiet Place? Where they're on they're far away from each other and they got to light the beacons and you see the fire and they're okay. That kind of thing. That's what I envision whenever this happens. The people are listening. I forgot about the conch. I hope somebody was blowing the conch. Yeah. And that Ricola horn, the really long one, down the hill. We know though those people can't stop doing that. They're doing that all the time. If they were able to stop, they would have a long time ago because it's kind of ridiculous looking. But I guess it's kind of based. Oh, I love you guys. Oh, what am I sipping on? Sipping on Atkins Creamy Chocolate. Atkins, it's I believe there is no. Yeah, it's a low carb, 4 net carbs, bunch of fiber in it. I haven't really had much food today. Kimberly says, I really enjoyed the earlier video. I hope Jeremiah does a video on more of some of the bad things that can happen in the trad movement. Kimberly, you are at HQ for that. You are at HQ. In fact, I don't know if you've seen it. I have 4 videos on Jansenism and sedevacantism and how there are certain temperaments and tendencies, personalities, and the kind of the way that a lot of trad people view the church, the way they view themselves, that you can see the ghost of Jansenism. You can see the ghost of Jansenism all over the place. That's where we began talking about the idea of the cryptosete, right? The person who lives and moves and has their being in such a way that's almost indistinguishable from a sedevacantist, and yet deceives themselves into believing that they are in fact not a sedevacantist. They're functionally so. So at that point, it doesn't matter. And we saw people said, well, that's really rude. But you got to sit there and say, look at the predictive power that our ideas have on this show. Just think about it. You have a situation where everybody was freaking out, Taylor Marshall and everybody else, and they're all freaking out. But if they use the categories, as many people did, use the categories advanced on this show with the cycle of enthusiasm, right, by itself, the cycle of enthusiasm, Martin Lutheritis, yeah, Monocle Man, right, all of these things, and the idea of the functionalist definition of cryptoseti that says it doesn't matter if you say the words or not. And I said, it's no different, because everyone was like, well, but these people aren't saying that's what they are. And I said, that's irrelevant. They don't even know what a functionalist definition means. And I'm like, if you sit there and you say, look, if you tell somebody, if you talk to a person, that person says that they believe you can have an abortion all the way up until the point of delivery, and that their religion should play no role in figuring it out, natural law should play no role in figuring it out, and that we need to only just allow that to be a decision between a woman and her doctor and whatnot. And they say, and there should be no law or anything. And you say, okay, so you're pro-choice. And they're like, I never said that. That would be ridiculous. That would be absurd. We'd all laugh at that person and say, this person, why are we even really listening? Taking it seriously. If they don't even know that everything they've just said is the very substance of what it means to be pro-choice. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you say you believe in total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, preservation of the saints, you believe in tulip, and you go, oh, so you're a Calvinist. I never said that. I never said I'm a Calvinist. You're like, yes, you did. The substance of it. It's betrayed you. So yes, we will definitely be talking about it. Yeah. Sarmad says St. Francis de Sales would throw hands with Luther. He'd murk him. Dude, I'm telling you. Straight up, man. Yeah, straight up. We'll talk about some of these questions here. I'll address those as we go along. Yeah, we'll address them as we all go along. So, I'll definitely. So we talked about that. There's 4 episodes in the Enthusiasm series, and I have a playlist on this channel. If you just look up Jeremiah Bannister, you'll see the playlist. Go ahead, check it out. Down, you'll see Jansenism. I think it's the tones and temperaments of traditionalists. There's one, the Achilles heel, and antiquarianism, the Achilles heel of trads. And then later we have a couple that were really important in the series about that. One of those was about sensationalism, scandal, and schism. And that's Father Lassance on obedience. And that one didn't make me any friends. I've got one in there. You can see one that in the title, it says, is Pope Francis an antipope? I talk about it. In fact, since the whole Taylor Marshall thing, there's been a number of episodes that begin the first half an hour to an hour are dedicated to just slamming the ever-living daylights out of that. And they can't survive it. They can't survive it. All they can do, the best they can do is play exactly into our hands. So yeah, we'll definitely be doing it. In fact, I'll probably start incorporating some of the old videos that people have said were the videos that I made back in like 2010, 11, something like that helped them to stay away from sedevacantism ever since. They watched it back in the day and it settled it. It was the nail in the coffin. I'll share those, probably embed those on the site or on the videos in a live video in the future. So we'll see. But believe me, it is a major theme of mine. And I've written about it too over at 1 Peter 5. Serving on the board of directors of the Association of Vineyard Churches. So I don't know if you're familiar with vineyard churches. That's one of those things that like Keith Green, a lot of the hippies and stuff would find themselves there at vineyard churches. And this guy was on a board of directors, right, in the Midwest, I believe, invited to a private meeting where we were introduced to prophets who were slated to have a major impact on the future of our movement. So you got to imagine the scene, okay? So the scene, you got this guy, he's a pastor, he works with a denomination, he's part of this movement, right? And they've got some weirdos involved. In fact, it's one of the things he mentions. He was worried about the idea that these were some vineyard prophets because the vineyard prophets are some real kooks. So he was self-aware even at the time that even his own denomination had some serious issues going on. But imagine being there and you say, look, you've been called by the denomination, the heads of the denomination, you've been called to attend this meeting, and they're going to be introducing you to certain people. And you say, well, who are you introducing me to? And they say, we're introducing you to some prophets. And you're like, oh, so like not just people who have prophesied, but people, they're prophets. Like that's, yeah. Oh yeah. These are prophets. And you're like, oh, okay. Is there like, do they have a message for us? And they're like, it's actually something that's going to impact the entire future of our movement. Yeah. So just imagine the prophets began to inform us that in the last days, the Lord was restoring the 5-fold ministry of apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, and evangelists to the church. We are challenged to accept the arrival of apostles and prophets because today's church already had plenty of teaching, pastoring, and evangelizing. The arrival of the prophets and apostles would lead to the world's last and greatest revival. I want to just say real quick, this is actually something that is, I think that sometimes the charismatics are a little bit onto something, right? So they're onto stuff when they go too far. So they have an idea of enchantment regarding, talisman, other things like that, where it's, kind of operating in the anointing and stuff like that. And you say, okay, so that's too far. But we believe in blessing rosaries. We believe in sacramentals. We believe in things like that. So they take an idea that has some similarities a little. Even the idea of going and visiting graves and believing that people who were holy people Not that they're ghosts that are floating around and they're invoking them to do stuff like that, but that there's a kind of anointing that goes with their body. And you go, we actually have that with ourselves, with the Catholic Church. The incorruptibles. And so there are certain things. Now, of course, they don't, the substance of that belief is filled with, quackadoodle-doo nonsense. So they're off the mark. They're not Catholic. They're off the mark on this. And you can argue that case with them. But that's closer to us in some ways than if you were, let's say, for example, a Jehovah's Witness. Or if you were a Presbyterian. Now, Presbyterian would be closer to us on issues like baptism or sacraments. At least they've got two. At least they believe, so they call them, right? Obviously way different too. So, but it's just giving credit where it's due. But they recognize that Protestant Christianity suffers from the fact that they do not have apostles. Well, we do. We have apostolic succession. We have it. And so we have people who function in this office. People who are consecrated to that office. And they keep that line going through time because it's an important function, in fact. They're recognizing that without it, church leadership is toast. You're just denominationalism run amok, right? You're all over the map. So they recognize it. Same thing with prophecy. You say, look at a lot of apparitions, for example, private revelations. We have things within, we have a spirituality, right? And I'm hesitant to use the word mysticism, but I'll use it trusting that you know what I mean. That we have that. And so that's something that a lot of Protestants feel is lacking, right? In a way that's not just for an individual, but is meant for the church as a whole. And you have to imagine the psychology of people who go to a church service and they speak in tongues and then somebody delivers the message of the Lord, right? Typically following a kind of Shakespearean, thus saith the Lord type message. And so they go through and say, thus saith the Lord, I say to you, my people, these are the last days. I'm doing this in the earth. That's not a message. If it was true, that would not be a message that's just for those people. That would have global significance, which is why I started talking in college saying, why aren't there scribes writing this down? They took it as purely cynical. It wasn't. It didn't begin that way. Saying, look, if you really believe that, so there's something inside. You have to grant to them that there's probably something inside where they recognize that and that it's dominated. Their church experience feels shallow. Now we can say it's for a lot of other reasons, but at least we know too that it also has to do with this, the mere governance of the church. Prophets revealed that we'd been chosen as people, and the movement that would lead Christians into this final display of power in the last days was us. Okay, so imagine that. That's grandiose. We were told that one such prophet had been commissioned by God to find apostolic leadership and apostolic ministry that, linked with the prophetic, would provide the basis for this new surge of end-time anointing. God had revealed to the prophet that he and our Association of Vineyard Churches were the chosen ones. And I immediately think of the Kung Pao. the prophet, you're like, how do I know? And he sticks out his tongue and it's got the little face on there and it goes, yay, yay. He's like, what is that? He's like, I call it tonguey. It seems to be the reason for my problems. And you're like, this actually is a good comparison. Now that I'm thinking about it and talking about out loud. I'm like, that actually goes, yes, the tonguey over there with the prophet guy that can't shut his yapper. It's causing all sorts of issues. Causing all sorts. But imagine feeling, how would you feel if you were already in that movement? You already at least gave it credibility. You already said, well, I kind of think this is legit, right? And you don't want to quench the spirit. You don't want to any of that. And then they tell you that you've been chosen. There's a bunch of them too. It's not just one guy. It's not Rando Joe from the soapbox downtown coming into the church. You're like, oh, that's the guy with the signs and stuff on the side of the road. Doesn't look like he showered in a while. No, not that. These are real ballers. It all sounded downright intoxicating. After struggling with the daily duties of ministry and our fears of inadequacy, this was exactly what we wanted to hear. Being told that our struggles and sacrifices had made us special in God's eyes was a comfort in itself. He talks about listening attentively to the flattery of these new friends, and that their skepticism in that time, they had a suspended disbelief, right? That it's easy in that moment when you're hearing stuff you want to hear, it's hard for skepticism to really kind of peek its head up. And they felt special because they felt singled out. It's like, what if it was real when you get the message in the email, right, from Muhammad, Bannister, whatever, talking to you about some oil tycoon that prayed and your name came up in an email and you're the only person they've sent this to and you really are the person and it's not money laundering or you won the lotto, the EU lottery, right? The spam messages with it. You won the EU lottery. You're like, oh, dang, son, really? Really? But imagine now that God's behind it. And that it's spiritual and that it has to do with the most fundamental and driving forces in your life. How could these guys not be from God? One after another had words from the Lord. So they're all confirming one after another after another. It's kind of like, I don't know if any of you ever followed the Prophecy Club. The Prophecy Club was something that was taking place during Y2K. I heard some crazy stuff. That was like really, really interesting talk radio, actually, because you had people on there. I remember one guy, he's on there, he's a prophet, and he's on there and he's talking about what's going to happen. He's talking about, buying all the oil and everything and having food. He's prepping and all that for Y2K because, the planes are coming out of the sky and they're going to slam into your house and stuff. And so dig your holes now. So they were saying all that stuff. And he said, well, you know what's going to happen. And he says, you know who's going to go first is what he said. And I'm like, what? And he goes, women and children, the weak ones. He said, if some woman comes up to me and she tries grabbing my stuff, he's like, that's Smith and Wesson. I'm like, whoa, holy cow, brother. Wowzers. He was very serious. He's like, I will survive. I'm a survivor. You've been listening to some Beyonce, man. During the months that followed, many of us received a plethora of personal prophecies. So these guys are lathering these people up. They not only came in and gave them the gist of it, but they also predicted their future roles, positions, and successes in God's new movement. So imagine just getting a phone call from these folks. And what it'd be like. They're like, look, I got a message for you. And you're like, oh, dang, okay, hold on. And you get in the zone, how do you do that, I guess? You have to, like, hold on, let me write this down. There were words of prophecy for our ministries, their locations and growth, prophecies about the great restoration to come, and our important part in it. And this is one of those things, too, that's also true. We will have a great restoration of all things in Christ our King. And we know that because it's an encyclical written only a matter of a couple of years before Fatima that is the arc of history. So we're not talking an event that is associated with a specific place. We're talking the overarching arc of history. And the arc of history is all things being restored in Christ the King. Otherwise, you've got him playing the part of a fool. You would have him playing the complete part of a fool. And you'd be pitting the keeper of the keys with the queen mother. I don't jive with that. I don't pit those against each other. But this great restoration, so they said, look, that it's going to be a great thing. And they encouraged people to pack up and leave. And it said some recipients of such advice would immediately pack up and go in faith, confident that the predictions of ministry success would come true. These guys would begin making staff changes. They would call and say, you need to get rid of this person. Right? Judgments in church policy and practice. The anointed individuals to healing ministries and apostolic appointments. So they would say, this person's a healer. Now, each one of these things I've experienced, and I'd like to know in the comments if you have too. And we'll go through, I'll talk about the comments toward the end, okay? So I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to go through it. And if you want to connect with me and you want something specifically directed to me, please make sure to put at Meaning of Catholic, okay? At the Meaning of Catholic. And that way it will stand out on the screen, okay? Otherwise, it's just my name might be blurred in and I wouldn't know. So I really would need to know if you'd be able to do that, it'd be helpful. So I have a relative that had something like that happen. They prophesied over him that he was going to move, and he was going to move from Kansas to Pennsylvania. Now, this person knew that the wife wanted to get back to Pennsylvania because that's where mom was. So the prophet knew this, and this happens all the time. They get little bits of insight all the time, okay? And then all of a sudden, it's as if God gave him the insight. And you're like, not really. You were talking to somebody about it. But he knew. So he tells them, you got to go to Pennsylvania. You're going to have this amazing ministry that's going to happen. It's going to take place. It's going to get huge. It's going to be awesome. And it didn't. It didn't. He had a church. He had a home. He had a church. Now, maybe he felt it was floundering. It was a smaller church. But it didn't work out like he anticipated. It didn't work out like he promised, and he picked up his whole family and he moved. Now, in the end, maybe they're still glad for it. But they won't be able to say that guy was telling the truth. Impossible. We had people doing that. I don't know anything about changes to staff. Well, I guess kind of. I'll talk about this one first, though, the healing ministries. We had a guy at Penfield Assembly that they started saying that he had a healing ministry. So whenever they'd have people come up for prayers, they'd bring up the healer. And he'd come up and he would do his healing on people. Typically stuff that you see about legs getting longer, or do you have shingles and stuff? That type of stuff. You know, nobody with like amputated arms and whatnot. Nothing like that, obviously. But, you know, at the same time, you know, but this guy, he was really convinced, and he would do kind of the aura thing where his hand would go a little bit over top of the body, like the energy was touching it. It was really mystical, and he'd get into it. And he's just like really like, you know, speaking in tongues and chitter chatter in his teeth and whatnot. And the idea about staff changes, this is actually a really big one. Because Penfield Assembly, in the end, the church I used to go to, in the end, this church ended up going cuckoo town. And the reason why was because you had a guy come in who called himself Bishop Stone. And Bishop Stone used to be this dude who was a pastor in the Assemblies of God. But he started getting wrapped up in the New Apostolic movement, the New Apostolic Reformation. And he started saying, well, we need to, the revival in the latter days, the revival of the latter rain is going to be the fivefold ministry. So what he did, he got in trouble with the Assemblies of God. Assemblies of God boots his rear to the curb. And what does he do? What does he do? He starts going around to churches of God and he starts talking to them secretly. Whisper campaigns. You know, you should be doing the fivefold ministry, right? It's not right that you just have pastors and teachers. And you're like, what should I do? You should submit to me. Which is what happened. So they did. The pastor made that decision, made the decision to do that. Well, eventually, you know, Assemblies of God started noticing the dues weren't coming in. And they knew this was a serious problem. And they figured out, oh my gosh, it's that Bishop Stone guy again. Well, the church split. It just split. And so 250 people or whatever, Bugger got down to like 30. And then when I showed up, I didn't show up for like 2 years. When I showed back up, I was just visiting. I wasn't even Pentecostal anymore. I was invited by people there and stuff, and I hadn't seen them in a long time. I roll up in there. There were more people in the worship band than there were in the pews. It was literally a jam church. Like, you had a jam band that would get together and they call it church. And there was like 3 or 4 people in the pews. And by that point, they were birthing people in the spirit and junk. And we'll talk about that in future chapters of this book. No, but they're birthing the spirit kids, huffing and puffing, labor pain. What are you doing? Giving birth to spirit kids. That's what they were doing. Obviously, people are leaving. They're like, this is literally, these people have lost their minds. They're out to lunch. Ministry musicians and lay people were promised star status. I've heard so many prophecies of people in Bible college that were told that they're gonna convert nations. Wow, really, that person? Oh, God goes, you're gonna go. You're gonna be all over the place. You're gonna be in these countries, and the chicks are crying. They're crying. I'd love to catch up with them and find out how that's going. Haven't heard any news about that. And of course, it's all wrapped up in the end times. It's all wrapped up in the end times, and they have a prophetic blueprint for all of it, because these guys have the magical eyeballs. They're in the zone. They're like that pastor at the Church with No Walls in Pennsylvania that got up and said that he allows the Holy Ghost to lead him every single sermon. And what he meant by that is he just flat out said, he said, as you know, I don't take any notes. I don't even study for it. I just let the Holy Ghost move through me. And 3 hours later, we're listening to the same sermon on genvolation, where he goes through all the stories, a little smattering here and a smattering there, of basically every story you can imagine in the Bible. No rhythm or rhyme, no nothing. Pure chaos. Pure nonsense. Nonetheless, some of the leaders began to voice concerns and uneasiness. They had seen people uproot their families, of course. So they had seen what I was talking about my relative. Associate pastors and other lay leaders were wrongly dismissed, indicted, and convicted by nothing more than a dream or a prophecy that accused them of some spiritual crime. He calls it fortune cookie faith. That was more important after a while. There were concerns in board meetings. Even though we were uneasy, we nervously agreed that spiritual gifts don't always operate in human beings in a perfect manner. So it's kind of like once you see the serpent handling stuff, remember we talked about that, and the serpent handlers, they're like, yeah, these are signs, the signs of the end, the latter rain, and all that. And you say, okay, well, somebody died or they've been getting bit. And all of a sudden, they're like, well, they have to explain it. They have to explain and make up excuses. So eventually they start seeing, as time goes by, they begin seeing the frailty of these men, the frailty of those systems. And then eventually hundreds of vineyard members received the gift of prophecy. And they began to play their trade among both leaders and parishioners. People began carrying around little notebooks filled with predictions that had been delivered to them by prophets and seers. The notebook crowd would rush forward in hopes of being selected to receive more prophecies to add to their prophetic diaries. Those identified with healing ministries were holding seminars on formulas and methods for healing prayer, such as finding hot spots on the body. That was one of the things that the healer at that church did. Interpreting the meaning of physical sensations or jolts in the bodies of those who they were praying over became a necessary part of a healer's training. It's tough, isn't it? It's tough not to sometimes make fun. And I don't want to do that. But there is something. There's a video, okay? It's in like York County. I think it's York County, Pennsylvania. There was this house. This woman was saying that her house was haunted. And it's the most absurd thing. Right at the beginning, the very beginning of the segment, they have one of those recordings, right, where they normally crank up. It's like super hot, the mic. It's like super hot, and it's all staticky, and you hear like, and they're like, dude, did you hear that? It said 867-5309, and you're like, I don't remember it saying that. Listen again. Oh, I think I heard it. It's one of those, but this one was really, really clear. In fact, I don't think this lady probably knows even what this word means, but timbre. You could hear the timbre of the voice. And it said, get out of here. And then she started talking. And it was very evident that was her voice. You're like, they didn't even, there's barely a pause. And you go, dude, that's that lady. Oh my gosh. You can play it over and over and over. But in it, she has these little videos that shows her, putting her camera up in the stairs to see if she can find little orbs. And she says that if there's orbs, that's how she determines whether or not she's going to go and sleep upstairs or downstairs. And she talks about there's scratching and stuff going on. And she breaks out this anointing oil, and she's doing that thing, right, that I was talking about, where it's like above the person's body, and it's the energy field, the aura stuff. Oh, yes. Yes, exactly. And you're like, what are you doing, lady? Nothing but jolts, hot spots, dreams and interpretations. Soon move center stage as prophecy conferences taught devotees to keep a pencil and a notebook by their nightstand to write down dreams as they occurred. I actually have no problem with that. I don't have any problem. In fact, I've gone through times in my life where I think that's actually a decent thing to do. Not to have some kind of like everything is prophecy or everything, looking for the magical symbolism in everything. But I think there's value to that. Maybe we'll do a show someday, because I think that's one of the things that dreams and visions and stuff like that people don't really talk about much anyway. Even from, and I don't want to get into too much trouble with this, but even from like a psychoanalytic perspective of dreams, or just even talking about a dream symbolism and like, why do we dream the things we do? And as long as you factor in the idea that it might be because the ice cream you ate, and you're not out to lunch and being like, it's just purely my unconscious talking. As long as you're not doing that, you're not looking at all this, I think that can be valuable at times. I think sometimes those things reveal things that we genuinely are afraid of. Like when my son recently said that he woke up crying a couple nights ago because he was really afraid that I ate the ice cream. And the truth is, I did not eat the ice cream until the next day. Yeah, he did. He said he woke up crying. He's like, he's like, why am I crying? It was all because of the ice cream. There's something going on in that guy. After a steady diet of the prophetic, some people were rapidly becoming biblically illiterate, choosing a dial-a-prophet style of Christian living rather than studying God's word. They always wanted their fix all the time. Some began to fake the shake and eye-fluttering symptoms that they had been told were signs from the Holy Spirit coming on them. Shaking, laughing, weeping, and eye-twitching always ensured that the parishioner would attract the immediate attention of the leaders and their peers. One conference speaker addressing 8,000 people discouraged the use of reference books, commentaries, and language tools for sermon preparation. Oh, it's probably the guy from the Church Without Walls. That's the guy. I didn't realize he was in the book. Yeah, he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Rather, the pastors were exhorted to determine their Sunday message through listening for prophecies during long walks with the Lord. Something was dangerously wrong in the movement. People were talking about not making decisions, like this goes back to the orbs, not making decisions until his hands got hot. He's a board member, by the way. And that indicated that his choice was wise. If it was hot, churches began to shrink because evangelism had been replaced by mysticism. People began to complain the church attendance would drop markedly during holiday periods because parishioners were apparently embarrassed to bring their out-of-town relatives to visit such a strange environment. I thought that was an interesting thing to think about. I am one of those people. I talk about Johnny Q and Sally Sue, right? As Johnny Q and Sally Sue, right? Sitting in the Catholic pew. Those are the people that I truly care about. It's the mission. The mission of the show has to do with those folks, right? The everyday folks. But a lot of everyday folks at this point right now are creasters. Okay, so they'll show up to church on Christmas. They'll show up to church on Easter. And that's what they do. And a lot of people mock that. Now, I think we should encourage them to do more than that, obviously, right? They're not attending their Sunday obligation. They're not doing confession as they ought. They're not, the likelihood that they're not sitting, well, they missed church. They need to go to confession, okay? So like there's a lot going on there. However, I'm also one of those that says that that's something, there's a value to seeing even that at least there's a pressure, whether internally or externally, there's a pressure on that person to participate during key liturgical times of the year. That's a good sign. It's a bad sign if Christmas and Easter people aren't showing up and they're showing up everywhere else. And you've supposedly got prophets and healers. Who wouldn't want to go to that if it was real? One of my earliest pastoral mentors taught me, when you're not sure what God is saying, go back to God and listen to what he already said. Aren't you grateful for tradition, by the way? Isn't that one of those things that you're just so grateful that we have that? That we can go back and we can think through these things within the bosom of the church? Isn't that awesome? That we're not like alone. That we don't have to pick up the Bible and monocle man the daylights out of that thing and come up with whatever our personal idea is about it. But that we can actually sit on the shoulders of giants, that we can walk in the footsteps of those with much bigger shoes than we could ever fill. That we are able to see the lives of the saints and the martyrs, the fathers of the church, the great popes in space and time, our Queen Mother. That we can learn from them. That we can hear the voice of the Lord through them. That we can hear the voice of the Lord through the scripture and hear it accurately in following the crook, in following, in heeding the words of the Pope and of the magisterium, the sacraments, all these things. Aren't you just glad for that? Think of how many safeguards are there. Think of how many checks and balances we have for that. It's remarkable, in fact. Right here. Some of us were suckers for this kind of manipulation. Feelings of guilt were conjured up by suggestions that he had exerted too much human leadership and control in the church. All of my peers were confessing their sins of control and letting go, so he did the same thing. They were told that they needed to eliminate the swirl of, right here, as my wife and I prepared to attend what would be our last Vineyard board meeting and directors meeting, we rehearsed what we were going to say. So they finally had enough. This guy, he finally had it. He said, too much. Too much. It's gone out of control. And this is what he said they needed to do. We need to eliminate the swirl of subjectivity that had entered the church. It entered their religious assembly. It doesn't enter the church. That's one of the things, to eliminate the swirl of subjectivity that had entered the church. That's one of the things that we talked about earlier on the show here when talking about the suspicionistas. When talking about the ipso facto crowd that doesn't think beyond that doesn't think about the divine constitution of the visible church, the promises of Christ, the marital vows to the bride that Christ died for, the dominion, his providence through his dominion and his kingship over heaven and earth. And that they place it all upon themselves, that they put God in the dock. The stance of neutrality and apologetics. I said, that's putting God in the dock. You're at least pretending to do it. You're going through the motions of that. How terrible. You're giving people the idea that that's okay that they do that. How terrible. We need to get back to the basics. And this is why I said this is not just about this. It's also about the mission of what we're doing. And saying, to get back to the basics, we talked first, enthusiasm. What is it? How did we get where we are? Where are we now? And how do we get out of this? How do we survive and thrive? How do we march forward to do things that we're even capable of doing in a time of great tumult and despair? What can we do? We talked about enthusiasm. To avoid the pitfalls, to avoid those tones and temperaments, the tendencies, the Achilles heel. Then we talked about Father Lassance, his manuals for young men and young women. I hope you are glad that I did it this way. I expanded that so that those principles could be applied to young people as well as to people who, aren't so young anymore. And then from there, after that, what do we do after that? We talked about secular age. And we talked about in what ways have we become secular, and that the things that we do, even when we think that we're being very traditional, or we say that we're being, really faithful to the faith of our fathers and everything else, a lot of the stuff that we do, we don't even realize just how secular we've become. And so I tried to expose that, to get down to the basics and say, these are things at the most basic and fundamental level, a presuppositional level. Every single one of those, enthusiasm, Lassance, secular age, Christianity in crisis, all of them. All the stuff about sedevacantism and the crypto-sedes, all that stuff that we've talked about is pounding away over and over and over at the most basic, foundational, presuppositional, and elementary level possible. Because we have to get back to basics. We've gotten wrapped up in politics and deep theology and deep apologetics, and that's fine. But when you got people where that's just the thrust of it all, they want to avoid the idea of going through the catechism. They're like, going through the creeds. That's why I love, by the way, what Jake Fowler is doing. Going through and talking about the councils and breaking it down. A lot of people say, well, I know about that already. Do you really? Do you? Or do you think you do? Are you like I was, where I came into the church and I decided I'm just going to leapfrog? Now, in fairness to myself, I read the Catechism of Trent before I converted to the Catholic faith. So I read the whole thing in the lead up to it. I'd already gotten to that place where I was becoming increasingly convinced of it. But I at least read it. But then I immediately jumped to conversations and considerations that were well above my pay grade. Getting back to basics. Getting back to simple things. Feeling that we can be empowered because God has made it in such a way that the vast majority of people on the planet, the vast majority, ordinary, everyday folk doing ordinary, everyday things, that they would be able to do that and do it well. And that in doing so, they would change the world. Much greater, oftentimes, than just one dude coming up with some idea. If it doesn't have anything beneath it, if it doesn't have any soil to grow in and to be activated across various different places, many different spaces, faces, to put those things into action, then it will be here and it will go. It's here and it's gone. Christian evangelism. We've talked about that. The Lausanne series was talking about the apologetics of everyday life and saying that when we think to give a reason for the hope that you have, it automatically falls into this realm of the 5 proofs. And I said, it's really as simple as because my mother lived a really amazing life loving God, and I watched how God blessed her in her life, and I can't wait to see her again. I saw her go through terrible things, and yet somehow she was a remarkable person. She was able to continue. She would rattle those beads and pray. She'd be awake at 5 a.m. reading her Bible while she's eating breakfast. It doesn't have to be, you don't need a degree for that, for the hope that you have. So we talked about that at a really basic level. Discipleship. Again, Father Lassance saying, Father Lassance talking about obedience, talking about true Catholic submission, talking about having fidelity, right? Talking about having solidarity, talking about, how do we discipline our lives? How do we discern our vocations? And to restore Bible study to our members' daily lives. That's one of those things that to me, I have felt like, a lot of my apologetic, in fact, is theological. It's not, I don't just take it as, well, let's just talk a bunch of science and philosophy. I do talk about presuppositions, but even those are rooted within the Trinity. And so I say, to me, no matter what it is, it's theological to me. Philosophy would be second. Theology is first to me. And the Bible is extremely important. It's within the bosom of the church. It holds a unique place, in fact. And I think that so often that people, they get so caught up in reading about philosophy. How many people would have read more philosophy books than Scripture? If they were to go back and look at their reading habits and find out, what are they reading? What are they basing it off of? And I'm saying to read the Scripture, even to read it liturgically, to say what is the church reading today? In the Liturgy of the Hours, what's the church reading today? I want to read that too. I want to pray that. I want to allow those lessons and those gospels to impact my life in a powerful and profound way, understanding them with the lights of the church. But to me, it's central. It's not just an add-on. And I've gotten flack. People have said, well, it's because you're a convert. You used to be a Protestant Bible thumper. That's true. And I think that's one of the things that I think is actually a good thing. I think it's awesome that people, they're wrong about it. They don't understand where the authority came from for the canon. Okay. We talk about that all the time. They don't have the authority for the canon. So they gutted a bunch of books. They don't even fully understand the ridiculousness of that. They don't understand the ridiculousness of believing that it all comes down to them and their Bible. the kind of anarchy that results from that, the relativity and subjectivity that's involved in that. At the same time, I think so many Catholics tragically don't understand that drive and motivation that says, I want to just know Jesus. I want to learn of the Blessed Virgin. I want to learn of the prophets. I want to learn of the apostles. I want to read the teachings in that deposit of faith insofar as it has been talked about in Scripture. Including, of course, the scriptures that talk about there being traditions that were given to them orally, right? That's part of it. But there's a reason why. There's a reason why we have epistles and lessons and gospels. There's a reason why we have a last gospel. There's a reason why. How many of our prayers, literally, how many of our prayers, just take the Latin Mass. How many of the prayers in the Latin Mass, as you're going through in the liturgy, how many of those have you seen in your missal that has a little note that says what passage from Scripture that comes from? We need to get back to it. Some of the leaders who dared to reveal their misgivings were quickly warned about the prophet, that their words don't fall to the ground. I heard that a lot, by the way. And that they're watching. Other directors began to share words that God spoke to them for the direction of our movement. One claimed that God had told him that a pure church was the cell church, and that we should abandon public Bible teaching and evangelism altogether for small group meetings. Penfield Assembly. Penfield Assembly ends up having a cell church, a home church, at the former pastor, at his home. And then people there was schism that resulted from that. And then there were a whole bunch of them, and then they all kind of went in that direction. And it was like, there was a network of them. And I remember I asked them one time, I said I wanted to go, and they were like, yeah, I don't really think you'd like that. I was still a Protestant at the time. And that they were more into, instead of evangelism, into signs and wonders. I mean, that's where you're tiptoeing with the serpent antler people. There were heated discussions, prayer, meetings. It was all summed up by a dream that someone shared the last night of these conferences, right? These meetings. The dream related as though it were from God himself, instructed us to do what? Nothing. To make no decisions, but to wait and see. Talks about how they're tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine. The adoption of subjectivity as the primary source of guidance had reduced us to complete ineptitude as pastors and leaders. What had happened? Why were these Christian men and women hearing so many contradictory messages from God? Selah. Selah. Think. I want you to really think. I want you to listen to this again. People began being tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine. The adoption of subjectivity as the primary source of guidance had reduced us to complete ineptitude as pastors and leaders. What happened? Why were these Christian men and women hearing so many contradictory messages from God? My criticism of the monocle man, my criticism of the mountain man coming down with the paper mache to tell everybody what's up, my criticism of the people looking through the ancient scrolls, my criticism of the models of lay apostolates that take this authority that is not theirs to exercise. My criticisms on all of those things is rooted in the idea that if it comes down to us as the authority, and God is in the dock, and the church is in the dock, and the Pope is in the dock, and the magisterium is in the dock, and all of these things are in the dock, and we're the ones bringing that case at them every day, making sure that everything is just fine, making sure that, yep, we still got a Pope, I think. Well, I don't think so. Well, I do think so. Well, I don't think so. What are you going to do? I guess I can't do anything about it. Why? Because we're all monocle men. Because we're all subjective at this point. We're all treating it as if, because I have access to the internet and I can read a bunch of these things, then that's all that matters. It's our own little brand of sola scriptura. We've just simply added books to it. We call them encyclicals. We call them quotes from saints. You take a proof text here and a proof text there, smatter them together, make your case, make a decision according to your conscience and your suspicions. Totally devoid of the divine constitution of the visible church, totally devoid of divine revelation, totally devoid of indefectibility, of infallibility, totally devoid. It's all about you. It's all about some dude on a camera. And I'm a dude on a camera. And I'm literally begging, please, don't ever do that to me. Never. The church talks, I listen. The church rules, I obey. Bottom line, end. So we had to get back to the basics. That's what we're doing. We're getting back to just knowing other people too. Saying, what do these people believe? What do we believe? Why do we believe these things? How can we learn why we believe what we believe? And one of the things I've taken from Pope Francis is the idea of learning from people on the margins. And I would say even theologically. Not that I go to them and say, what's the revelation they came to so that I can embrace it and mix it in with me? But to say, what can I learn from those who are enthusiasts? What can I learn from them about avoiding the pitfalls? I walked away from enthusiasm with a lot of lessons, but one of those things that we brought to the world through this show was the cycle of enthusiasm, and maybe it needs tweaked. Or at least it needs an asterisk or two, to show that sometimes it depends on various factors. If secession or schism, or excommunication, however that plays out, it would kind of change. It would flip around, right? So you'd have to have kind of a variable for it. It's got a variable. But the idea is that we walk away with a lesson that says, if I begin to speak, if I begin to separate from my co-religionists, if I begin to speak out in a way that says that we're in the end times, that I'm part of the remnant, and that Rome has lost the faith, that the popes and the councils have contradicted each other, and I get to that place in my mind, and I start to think that maybe it's an apostate church, it's a robber council. If I get to that place, I got Martin Lutheritis. I've opened up a can of Diet Worms, and I've got myself some enthusiasm running through my veins. Worms in the brain, enthusiasm in the veins. Doped up on the junk. And you learn this and you say, and that's a clown card that's really tough to turn around. Because you're literally maligning, calumniating the bride of Christ and the cross of Christ. That's tough. You get to that place. Like I've compared it to a man who crosses that line and punches his wife. And I said, man, people are probably familiar enough with domestic abuse that a lot of times when that happens, that guy will go through a period of time. People are going to find out. He's going to get talked to, and he maybe get defensive a little bit, but he goes through a period of time where they're saying that they know that what they did was wrong. But they cross that line, and it gets easier and easier and easier and easier to do until finally you say that B word deserved it. It gets easier to do. And at that point, does it matter if you're excommunicated or if you just simply walked out the door? You've created, as Knox said, by a kind of fatality, you've created a new kind of Christianity in the world. So the world is around you, and it goes back to this. They're hearing so many contradictory messages from God. One person says this, one person says that. They say you got to go out to the desert. You got to go to that YouTube channel. You got to go check out that apostolate. That's where you're going to really find it. And you say, where's Peter, man? Where's Peter right now? Not Joe Schmo, nobody guy over here. He says his hate mail grew. People would say, well, why am I doing that? I talked about that stuff when I was a baby Christian. Now I'm talking about really serious stuff. You had people, my hate mail grew. Even the movement's leaders publicly denounced me. It's coming, by the way. People are going to figure out what we're doing here. They're going to figure out what we're doing here. There's already people right now that don't like what we're doing here. They don't like what we're saying. They don't like that we're calling them out. You think crypto studies like that we have predictive power with our functional definitions? Do you think they like that? No, they do not. They loathe you, boy. And they'll loathe you. But the church was becoming healthy again. Attendance increased almost overnight. I see too many praise reports. I see too many people talking about powerful things that God changed their life. I've had people that say, you know, Jeremiah, I remember tuning in. I thought you were a wild man. You know, you're growling into a mic and you're waving your arms all over and you're real dramatic. And 1 minute you're laughing and the next minute you're crying. And the next minute you're growling into a mic and the next minute you're sucking stuff through a straw to bypass the blood-brain barrier, scientifically verified and, you know, proven. And they said, I didn't know how to deal with it. But I listened. And I started realizing that my life had been completely torn all over the place. I'd been tossed to and fro all over the place. I had gone above my pay grade. I had driven outside my lane. I was doing what you were talking about lighting up the thurible with that torch as hot as you could possibly get it, burning hot, cinders, and then chucking it at the Pope. How dare you to the pontiff? How dare you to the Roman See? And I started to hate myself. And I went to confession. And I wept. And I told the priest that I was done being that man. I was done being that woman. Within a few months, several hundred people came to the saving knowledge of Christ. We talked about this. We talked about it today. And I said, these guys going out bashing the Pope 24/7, these guys are some of the best counter-apologists that have ever existed in history. And they're taking special aim at the Pope. Special aim at the magisterium. Special aim at those things that are most promised to remain preserved to the end of time. That is what they're going after. That's why I said it's civil war. It's civil war. I said you literally have to, you got to be locked and loaded. You got to be ready. Because these folks, they're going for the jugular. What are we without Peter? What are we without the chair? What are we without the ark? And why would people convert to this? Their entire mission is deconversions. It's the Francis effect. Stuff like that. Where the bulk of the people in their church growth, it's like the Protestant church growth. They get new people and they're like, yay, look, we're growing. And they say, what were you before? And they're like, well, I was a Catholic. I used to go up to this parish. But man, Frankie, Bergoglio. That's what they do. We want to reach new converts. We want to reach those people that we're not just church hopping. We want to reach new people for the Lord. We want to reach our classmates, our coworkers. And we're not going to go out there and slam the daylights out of the Pope and then think that it's going to be compelling when we tell them that they need to submit to the Pope. You've just castrated your entire apologetic. Your entire evangelical witness. You've literally castrated it. And left yourself, your entire thing, impotent at that point. And we emphasize the idea of going and talking to people in real life, not just being online. Get a life, go out, go to meetings, go to groups, do things in real time. Otherwise, you get stuck in a silo. You know how hard it is to get stuck in a silo and, out and about? Those are like real things, like a real silo. You're like, oh man, but a silo online, that's different. A lot of people call them bubbles. Echo chambers. Break free. Our struggles are with ordinary, normal issues of Christian life. All of this because of the basics. It's really that simple. Books like Counterfeit Revival must be written, must be published. You see, in the day of the Apostle Paul, false prophets, heretics, and legalists resisting his ministry needed to go to considerable effort to inject the opiate of false doctrine into the church. Long travel by horseback or on foot, the heat, dust, months away from home, and painfully slow methods of copying documents all contributed to making the spread of false doctrine difficult. But not so today. Not so. The wonders of the modern world make the spread of false doctrine deceptively thorough and quick. In some ways, it gets to the point where once you've ingested it enough, and once you've accepted it, and it becomes retroactive within you, and it starts spreading throughout, right? That disease that fleshes itself out through symptoms, that disease that we call enthusiasm, that we call Martin Lutheritis, that makes its way through and reveals itself in various symptoms by separating from your brethren, refusing to commune, refusing to call the Pope, all of that stuff, refusing to accept your pay grade, refusing to accept that you're driving in your own lane, wanting to do things way above your pay grade, not understanding. And some of that's just, they feel hopeless and helpless. I'm not saying that it's purely pride. But when they do that, it gets almost to the point of a hypodermic needle. There's that quick fix. Snapping it up, putting that strap on. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's more like it. Watch out, Bergoglio. Watch out for me. I'm junked out of my mind. But that means we got to be more vigilant. I remember Michael Lofton, when he's doing his stuff over at Reason and Theology. He's doing stuff now over at Catholic Answers. And I remember it was a night where he was talking about, he had Padre Pio's personal secretary on. It was awesome, by the way. It's one of my all-time favorite interviews ever. And it was just absolutely great that his former secretary is a really, really cool guy to just listen to, right? Really, really awesome. And but that night there was also another live stream being done, asking by another very prominent YouTuber, Catholic YouTuber, about whether or not Joe Biden, went poo-poo in his pants when he went to go see Pope Francis. And so one video, Padre Pio, his secretary, talking about personal stories of Padre Pio, that when they talked about it, it was like a couple hundred people watching live. It was like 5,000 people watching live on the one having to do with Joe Biden. And it was disheartening. And I said, in this modern day and age, if you talk about stuff like this, it's like trying to sell, we're on a visual medium. It's going to be tough. Because it's kind of like the news. How often do you expect to turn on the news and a real pressing story tonight at 11? We're going to talk to this person about how their house has never burned down or been broken into. And you're like, okay. It's like, hey, so you've lived here for how long? I've lived here for 30 years. Have you ever had your house broken into? Nope, I don't think so. Well, that's amazing. We'll be back to you tonight. Whatever. Back to you and the crew. Who cares about that? But poo-poo, Biden going poo-poo in his pants in front of the Pope, all of a sudden it's like, dang, son. So you talk about things that are basic. You talk about things that are fundamental. You talk about things that are elementary. You talk about things for the everyday, ordinary person. The Johnny Q and Sally Sue sitting in the Catholic pew. You go ahead and you talk to those individuals, and sadly, you're not going to get as many people coming in and checking it out. You have to be okay with it. You have to. You have to, because you have to know it's the right thing to do. You have to know, because this is how you would equip regular folks to do the best they can in a world that's got them down. And if you don't, they're toast, you're toast. What are you doing at that point? It takes more work. It takes patience, humility, to say, this is the track that I have taken. The track I have taken is one of vision that recognizes the fruits and the gifts and the talents of everyday people doing everyday things in ordinary ways, but doing them well. And in doing that, they are restoring all things in Christ. They're taking dominion in that wonderfully Catholic way that says, I need to be the best parent I can be. I need to be the best mom and dad I can be. I need to be the best husband and wife I can be. I need to be the best son and daughter I can be. Not only to my physical parents, my biological parents, but my spiritual parents too. To get involved in the church, to recognize what is the primary emphasis of a lay apostolate. Should it be completely disconnected from a parish? What is a parish and why is it important? Why do you live next to one? What should you do? What should your prayer life be? What should your life for spiritual readings be? Should you have a spiritual director? And people say, well, I hear that in homilies. And you go, for what, 10 minutes? And now you're not hardly getting that at all. You're hearing all the time that catechesis is wicked bad. And yet what are they talking about? Poo-poo Biden. Cut it out, son. Cut it out, sister. The urgency of biblical correction is never more pressing than now. I'd say biblical, traditional, sacramental, liturgical, with the catechesis in your life. Right? Those things that build you up and to build other people up. To realize that you have a responsibility that begins in your home. It begins with yourself, so that you're presenting the best self you can to the people around you. And that those people will then go out and the same thing. And those people will go out and do the same thing. And you can see how stuff goes upstream or downstream. You can see. You can witness the effects of what you do, those small things. Like when Haley shared that link with the person in the chat, Jesse. When you share that in the chat, or was it Jesse or was it, forgive me for that. There's another guy too. When she shared the link in the chat having to do with the New Age stuff, and all of a sudden something so small that she did not anticipate, God used that in a powerful way, and that woman watched those videos that she never imagined would be used in that way by God. And what did she do? What did she do? She took those tarot cards and she chucked them in the trash. And if you can't praise God and say hallelujah for that, something is seriously wrong with you. That's getting priorities right. Now pray. That's what I wanted to talk about. Because as I read that, I know that it's about this. And I hope that you had fun hearing about the stories, and we'll go through some questions real quick. But hearing about the stories and hearing about, the way that, these weird groups and stuff and the way that they prophesy and the healers and all that jazz. And it's going to be exciting to hear some of these stories here and some of the comments. But that it was deeper. That as I read this for myself, I thought to myself and I said, that resonates with me. That resonates with what I see all around me. And I said, this really has to do with a mission. This has to do with saying, what is it that we do here? Why do we do what we do? And what role do I have? What about you? And so I wanted to do that. And I'm glad that it was more personal. I don't even know how many people were listening. I don't even care. I'm just glad that you were here. So, all right, let's get this window capture up here. And again, if you want to ever reach out to me about any of this stuff at all, and you want to connect in any way to get more involved with the show, if that's something you want, or whatever, just if topics you'd like me to talk about, things like that, hit me up. And the best way is Telegram. You can do it at Gmail, Paleocrat Diaries at Gmail, but you can also do it over at Telegram. And that's honest to goodness, that is just the best way, because then you can send videos, audios. There's no limit on the size of things. So you can send big files, PDFs, all that stuff. And of course it's like Skype, so you can do video call or voice call, and it's secure. And so there's a way to show that it's encrypted. So very, very, very good. All right. So let's see here. Dan says right here, this was one of the things that helped me convert from being a charismatic Protestant. realizing that Catholicism is inherently mystical and supernatural. Same here, man. Same here. So obviously a lot of it had to do with St. Francis de Sales, but it also had to do, the first one was actually chant. That was a huge influence. John Michael Talbot, his music was a big influence. And St. Francis of Assisi, the story of St. Francis. And so that stuff's always resonated with me. Yeah. And even quietism. Because quietism, it was Catholic quietism. And so it was, obviously condemned. But the people who were doing it were Catholic people. And that it had not been addressed. They'd gone too far. They didn't know when to quit. And eventually the church shut it down. However, Guyane, to the best of our knowledge, finally shut her yapper, was quiet, lived the rest of her life under the verdict of the Inquisition, and was silent for the remainder of her days. And that it wasn't until after her death that Protestants, and I guess Protestants came to visit because they found out that she was dying. The rumor had gotten around that Madame Guyane was dying. And a number of them went and met her, and then they left, and years later they began going around talking about that stuff. So, but the idea being that quietism was the first time for me where I began going from the place where everything had to be ecstatic to where everything could be contemplative, like a mental prayer of quiet. I fell in love with quiet. Witterson says, you're inspiring me, Rachel, but just a little more procrastination. Oh, yeah. So, Rachel, just finished folding laundry. My least favorite job, but made bearable by all of you in Jeremiah. I'm really glad that I could do that and help out. Samuel says, all cults and quasi-sects have one thing in common: money, power, and sex with multiple women. That's actually 3 things in common. 3 things there, man. 3 things there, Sarmad. Well, you're right, man. Enthusiasm for sure. Enthusiasm doesn't always involve money, but it always involves, even if it's a sense of personal power, antinomianism and stuff like that. That would definitely be the case. But yes, cults, most cults, although there's one that the garbage eaters, and we'll talk about them. That's a really fascinating cult. Let's see here. All right. Reverend says, and by the way, nice to see you there, Deacon Joe. My wife, may she rest in peace. Yes, brother. Didn't like folding laundry, but she hated ironing more. Yeah. That's why, dude, you got to get that spray. The wrinkle release spray. That's what you got to do. It smells good, too. Smells good, too, man. Yeah. Septuagenarian. So true. Yeah, Conan, so true. Responds Calvin to charisma cope. Yeah. Yeah, Dan says that was his journey, so they're talking about their journey together. Let's see here. All right. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of talk about the laundry. I don't know anybody who likes that either. I don't know about that. Yeah, okay. Lucas says, dude, Prophecy Club throwbacks. Yes, man. Yes, I was in college during Y2K, man. I used to know, I don't know if this guy was part of the Prophecy Club, but oh my gosh, what is his name? Shigionoth, what's his name? Steve Solomon. Steve Solomon, that dude. His music, it was just chaos in that place. It was nonsense. And it was one of those nonsense that even at the time when I was like really into that kind of thing, it went over the line for me. I was like, ugh. It's like, this is bad. It's like Benny Hinn when what's his name shows up? Rodney Howard Brown from the Toronto Blessing. Rodney Howard Brown, things got so crazy, Benny Hinn, it was at Benny Hinn's church. Benny Hinn left. He walked out the sanctuary, he was done. Said he'd never invite him back. Yeah, Prophecy Club, I'd rather watch the Stepford Wives. I'll tell you, it was fun to watch. These people are nuts. Yeah, the phone and desktop version of the show are so off sync. Are they really? Oh, maybe if you're on 2 different things, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what would cause that. Meaning of Catholic Jeremiah, I went to several charismatic Catholic healing services when I was younger. Yeah, I mean, I've been to not tons of them, but I've been to some. Not so much healing services. I mean, I guess they were laying hands and doing the anointing oil and stuff like that. I was actually up in the sanctuary around the altar. It was a little stunning, to be quite frank. But it was, that obviously was a little off-putting. But it was really and these were nice people, okay? These were, like, as private individuals, they were very kind. In fact, I have a prophecy of them. They recorded it, and so I have it here. And that the audio to that is still available. I'd be able to find it. I think I may have the prophecy over me that talked about me as the icebreaker. And that was by prophet Dr. James Maloney. But those people, they did a series on the gifts of the Spirit and stuff like that, and they were really ramping it up, and it was a lot of people, and it was finally the day, and they're like, today's the day you're going to do it. We've been waiting for this day. And I'm thinking, that is just so weird. That isn't how it worked in Scripture. That isn't how this thing worked. That they're like, okay, guys, we've been going through this, and now finally, after all this time, today is the magic day that you get to speak in tongues. And it's like, yeah, what a weird pitch. And it did not set with me, right? My cousin had her crippled hands cured by St. JP2 in her dreams, and she woke up and she was actually cured. Thought I would share that. Dude, bro. Did you guys ever submit that, by the way? Was that one of a miracle that was submitted? Or was it after he was already deemed saint? I'd love to know more about that. And to even see, because I had an issue with my hand where a prophet came up and said that my hand was going to be healed and everything else, and it was not. Now, I didn't have crippled hands, probably anything like that, but it was something that was enough that I went up, right? Yeah, you said it was huge in the family. Of course, man. Healing is definitely a thing. So are charisms. Just not the huge show people put on in these places. Yes, and I don't deny that there are times where you will have healings take place in environments where you would not expect it. I don't deny that. I think that would be almost impossible to deny. You can just empirically look at it and say, yeah, here's an example over here of this. This person did that. Now, in fairness, it's extremely rare. We're one of the only religions in the world that goes through such a rigorous investigation period at all to try to figure out the legitimacy of miracles. Let's see. Traditional Thomas. Let's go, Jeremiah. I grew up in this before becoming Catholic. Yes, man. Traditional Thomas. Good to see you there, homie. Good to see you. Your boy, EB. I go to be slayed in the spirit, brother. Right? You go to be slayed. I dance for the loud. A lot of people are that way. Yeah, man. A lot of people are that way. Imagine Satan not being able to avoid leaving Orbeez around. Talking about the orbs and the lady in the York County. I'll see if I can find that video and I'll share that link. That way you can see and hear for yourself the timbre of her voice and say, it's obviously her. And the magical talk about, there's in this one area you can get scratched and everything and pushed and she's got magical eyeballs, this woman. She knows really what's going on. It's like, because you're trying to get the truth out. And come to find out at the very end of it all, the very end, the crescendo of the entire production that was done on the news, at the end you find out, coming soon, this, I don't know if it was Adventure, Travel Channel, coming in 2 days, Travel Channel is going to be having a special edition thing about this woman's house. It was a promotion. It owned by the same place that owns the news place. Yeah. Bogus! Let's see, man. Meaning of Catholic, I was told by a Southern leader that I'd know I'd met my wife once I felt lizard in my gizzard. That might be some folk wisdom, actually. I don't know, man. I don't know. I was prophesied that I'm in there one time, man. I'm laying hands on people. It was when the people were saying I was an apostle and such. I'm laying hands on everybody, and people are being slain in the spirit left and right. And there's a crowd of people coming up around me, and I have these ladies. And one of them I'm good friends with still, right? She's a nice lady. I don't think she's as much into that stuff anymore. But they were like on the ground praying and like touching my feet and like touching my arms and stuff. And they'd stand up and I'd lay hands and they'd boom and they'd fall down. And another one would stand up and I'd boom and lay it. And sometimes they're just blowing at them, right? Waving my hand, blam, people are falling. And finally, this one lady gets up and she does a thus saith the Lord. And everybody's like kind of quiet. And she goes, thus saith the Lord, I say unto you, my son, Jeremiah, that before the creation of the world, before I had formed you, I created someone for you, a woman, right, to be your wife. And that you know that the woman who is to be your wife is standing next to you right now. And I'm like, what? I look over and she's looking at me. We're both like deer in headlights at each other. Dang, girl. I mean, we were kind of into each other a little itsy bit, but she knew that my dad was that he was hoping, and that family, that I was all going to be good. Obviously did not work out. She ended up getting married to some guy. I think they have like 30 kids or something like that. She's cranking out kids left and right. Of course, I'm married to the mega hot half Korean beauty queen wife. Let's see. When did Catholics start thinking they were more Catholic than the Pope? That's actually been a while, but it's been, that'd be a good question to like find out the history of Catholics who thought they were more Catholic than the Pope. Luther would be one. I mean, Luther would be the most prominent one. You would have any group, the Donatists. The Donatists would have been that way, So it goes back a long way, but the prevalence of it at this point, I think, has to do with access to information and individuality being supreme in the West. That we're no longer porous. We no longer have so much of a fear of saying that out loud because there's a buffered self in the secular age. And if you want to know more about what I'm saying about that, I have a series on the secular age. I have that over at a playlist on reason and theology. A diet of worms does sound ominous. It is. It is. And you don't want it in the brains, man. You do not want it in the brains. If you're more Catholic than the Pope, come on down and join me at the First United Church of the Sixth Secret of Fatima Reform. Yeah. Okay. Oh my gosh, homie. Oh, the United Church of the Sixth Secret of Fatima Reformed. Oh, the first one. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's good, dude. That's making my eyes water almost. Oh, that's good. Let's see. I've often wondered it myself. In my research, it was when King Louis XIV declared himself the sovereign pontiff of France, picking bishops, etc. David, I would say, it wasn't so much. It might be even better. I mean, I guess the Donatists would have thrown the Pope under the bus. Montanists, same thing. But they at least appealed. But once they were done, and once their appeal didn't work, Tertullian's appeal, once he said, look, they say he went to Rome or whatever, it didn't work. After that, they stuck with their guns and essentially started a cult. And of course, Tertullian ended up creating a church that it was under the time of Saint Augustine that church ended up being converted back into the Catholic Church. And so, but that's a great point. And that's more of a political dynamic too. So you have the spiritual dynamic, but then how does it flesh itself out later with political stuff? So very, very good mention there. Let's see. Yeah, and how it gave birth to Gallicanism, right? French intellectual tendency to plus catholique que le papa. I don't know how to pronounce it right. I'm hacking it to pieces. Tertullian also fell off the mark, right? On the right side, right? So yeah, you have so you mentioned Tertullian, of course, yep. So that goes back. All right, let's see. Inside baseball stays inside baseball because the outside world finds interchurch chaos to be scandalous. Dude, I said that earlier, man. I said that earlier, didn't I? I said these people are dragging, they're pulling out the guts of the church and they're dragging it out into public. They're dragging out all the skeletons, everything else, and they think that it's not got any negative effect. Give me a break. Jesse says, the Kaiser's on fire, dog. Dude, come on, homie. Dude, this show is straight up fire. This show is straight up fire, right? We are torches and light, man. That's what we are. We're little thuribles. We're thuribles, man, letting off that aroma of the incense, of prayer, right? It's hot enough that it's making some light. You got the reflections coming off, man. Little glimmers in the darkness that we're trying to make it brighter and brighter and brighter for the Lord. Let's see. Athens said he was going to stay up and wait for me. I know. I'm in trouble a little bit with my son. It took me longer than I anticipated. Francois says, Bannister is hard to listen to. It's because he doesn't have the shepherd's voice? Is it because he doesn't have the shepherd's voice? I have no idea what he's talking about. Bannister is hard to listen to. What are you talking about, Francois? What are you talking about? And is it because I don't have the shepherd's voice? Look, dude, that sounds enthusiastic of you, man. I hope you ain't being some weirdo. You're like, I'm not sensing. It's not passing the sniff test for me. Okay, nice to know a little bit about the psychology going on in between the old ears there. I don't mean to be rude, Francois. I don't know you. Maybe you're joking. But I'm the guy defending the shepherd. The visible one, not the shepherd of desire that anti-pope people have. The crypto-sedes. They're Nestorian weirdos. They've got the invisible pope and the invisible chair. That's who they really support. Yay! Baloney, man. Baloney. Divine constitution of the visible church. Yeah. You have to submit, period, man. Can't play around with that. Don't LARP on me. And if you're LARPing on me and this is all a big joke, dude, you better be cool, man. What's the shepherd's voice? Yeah, who? Yeah, we'll see. My guess is there's not going to be much back and forth on that front. Let's see. Phil Morgan, I've been watching Dr. Marshall for at least 10 years. I remember his first interview of Tim Gordon in 2018 and 2019. When Tim's contract for TNT ended, I remember Timothy Flanders was next. Did the contract end? Those two had a falling out, man. That was not, maybe it was like they didn't renew it, but there was more than that. And Tim, I've wondered about that. Because Tim Flanders, he was on there a bunch of times. It seemed like it was going good. I'm really grateful that he never got involved. Sam Gutierrez, Late Night with Jeremiah Bannister. You can't do this to me, man. I have an essay to finish. Okay. Yeah. After being introduced to Meaning of Catholic from the Taylor Marshall Show, I started listening to MOC. Tim interviewed you, Paleocrat. I heard your story indirectly from your link to Dr. Marshall. Yeah, no, you might, but not many people. No, maybe people who came to this. I've been doing this for way longer, and I used to have way more views when I was with other media groups like Holy Faith Media. I get like 3,000 to 5,000 views on every show, every live show. But I was broadcasting over 25 different places at the same time. And if you want to know why I walked away from all of that and why I did that, you can go ahead and you can check it out. It's all still there. You can see the final videos, what I was going through, and what I said I needed to change gears and get involved in something that was more focused on basics and stuff. Not 5 days a week, 3 hours a day. And I do not need to, I don't owe anything, to be quite frank, to Dr. Marshall. I don't mean to be rude, Phil. I owe nothing to Dr. Marshall. Zero. Dr. Marshall, number one, Dr. Marshall banned me without ever talking to me one time. Banned me, blocked me on YouTube. Never engaged with me, never talked to me. And I'm not going to sit there and speculate. I can say, okay, so you now know of me, and I'm grateful that you do. I'm very grateful for that. However, I've put a lot of work into what I do, and I've been doing it for a long time. He was a little bitty guy. And I mean like young. He's a little young dude. That's why it's super uncool to hear you guys biting the hand that fed you. Phil, he didn't feed me. And just, Tertullian. You know how many people, Phil, Tertullian led to the Lord? And do you know how many people have criticized Tertullian? Do you go to bat for Tertullian? If you are somebody at his level, tell me where I'm wrong. Don't guilt trip me with this. Tell me where I'm actually wrong in my argument, because so far he can't. He can't. No, I haven't had anybody. The only person who's even tried, Diamond Brothers tried, they failed. Then who? Nova Sordo tries, they fail. Everybody else grumbles. And you quit watching Reason and Theology because of his attacks on Dr. Marshall, but you're not going to quit watching Dr. Marshall because of his attacks on the Pope? Phil, what? I don't mean to be rude. Your ethics are really whack right now. Like, I don't mean to be rude, but dude, for real, like if you are okay with him bashing the Pope, but you're not okay with somebody rightfully criticizing Taylor Marshall to say what Taylor Marshall has said is bogus. And people are gonna say, you know what, you're only who you are because of that. You know how disingenuous that is, by the way? I don't mean to be rude, but dude, screw off. I've done this for way too long, invested way too much time. I didn't sit at his feet. Cut it out, man. You're better than that, by the way. You know better, Phil. You're right now, you're being fragile. That's fragility, man. I'm really sorry to say that, because you're an otherwise great guy. But I don't really care if you heard it indirectly from him. Indirectly. No. And again, Taylor Marshall has never shared one tweet, never liked one tweet, never contacted me one time, never one email, never addressed an argument, never nothing. I owe nothing to Taylor Marshall. I went to school for this. I've been doing this for years of my life. It's on public record. 5 days a week, 3 hours a day. And you want to say, well, you don't have as many viewers as him. I don't even care. If that's what happens when you get that many viewers, count me out. Maybe you haven't been listening. Count me out, man. Yeah. But you're wrong to say that his hand ever fed me. In fact, it's obvious he's fed you. Or let me take it back. Okay? And I've said this before. I get that a lot of people feel like, that they learned a lot from him and that he was really important in their development of their beliefs and their thoughts about things, and they were frustrated about not having been catechized. I think I watched altogether maybe like 7 or 8 episodes of Taylor Marshall in my life. In my whole life. And I stopped listening because it was sports talk to me. It was literally tiddlywink footsies to me. I'm like, I've already done that. People, it maybe before he did some really dope stuff, I don't know. But by the time he got into the world of the retroactive red pill, he was of no use to me. There was no utility. There was nothing that says, well, I'm going to go to him. I read books, man. I don't go to YouTube so that I can learn my faith. I read books and I talk about books to people who may not have time or money to read those books, but would like to learn those books. That's what I do. And I got my degree in what I do. And I've done it on radio and TV. So I'll take credit for that. Thank you very much, by the way. And I hope that we can do enough of that tit for tat, because you're an otherwise decent man. And so I would sit there and say, look, I've never had any issue with you. You've obviously never had too much issue with me. You just don't particularly like this. That's perfectly fine. Tell your boy to stop. Tell your boy to stop spitting in the face of the bride of Christ. Tell your boy to stop lashing out with the sword of his words at the vicar. Tell him to stop. Unless you do that, I don't know what to tell you, man. Because I ain't stopping. I'm not stopping. Yeah. And Phil Morgan, you're going to pull patron cash. You know what, dude? Go ahead. I hope you at least reach out to Meanie of Catholic first, but you're welcome to pull patron cash from me. You're not going to hold me by the throat with money. What's wrong with you? Maybe you haven't literally been listening to what I've been saying. I'm not even the kind of guy that focuses on that hardly at all. I have money independent of that. You don't know me, apparently. But you want to come in here and you want to start saying, I'm going to take away the money from you if you don't stop going against Taylor Marshall. You're going to keep paying Dr. Marshall. If he keeps bashing the Pope, then take your money and leave. And don't let the door hit you. I'm not even kidding, Phil. Bugger off. You pull that stuff, you pull that stunt in here, bugger off, homeboy. And that's really unfortunate, man. Because you're an otherwise decent guy. This is how you even talk. You're not even the kind of guy to reach out to somebody in private. You're the kind of guy to do this. Dude, that's baby chatter. I can tell who you're listening to. Yeah, man. Yeah, go find somewhere else, man. I'm not even kidding, Phil. I'm really sorry. It's really unfortunate, dude. But you should talk to Tim. Tim is not me. Tim and I have disagreements. Tim Flanders and I have disagreements. That's one of the reasons I'm here. But if you think that you're going to be like everybody's beholden to, well, I'm taking my money if you come against Taylor Marshall. Okay, he's the new magisterium. I got it. Okay. Oh, Taylor Marshall. Oh, Taylor Marshall. We all listen to you, Taylor Marshall. Everything you say. Oh, no, man. Woo. Come on. Do better than that, man. Do better than that. Gosh. That is so tragic. What a tragic thing, man. But as I said, I'm not kidding. When it comes to me, and this let everybody know, we'll end here because we're over our time. But I'm being really, really, really serious. I'm being really serious. That if somebody comes in and they say, we're going to take our money if you keep talking about stuff you believe, you can hit the road, Jack. You can hit the road. How dare you? Who do you think you are? And who do you think I am? You know how many places I've had to stand up for what I believe at great cost to my professional career? Do you think for a second that there's been one time, where I've ever betrayed my core convictions because of money? Do you believe that? On what basis? None. You're literally making it up. Making it up. Never. I've lost positions. I lost my being in school. I had 1/2 of a semester left for my degree at a Bible college. And I was told that I had to recant my belief that women should not be pastors and that I was a Calvinist. They said, you cannot be a Calvinist and you've got to get rid of your belief that women can't be pastors or you can't get your degree. I had invested money and time into that place. I had people at Christ for the Nations Dallas coming to my door with a baseball bat and putting signs at the end of the hall warning people about me and telling people that I worship John Calvin. Do you think that I cowered in fear to them? I told that school that I don't play that. I was told, working as a lobbyist, a chief aide to a lobbyist, I was told, investigate the election of 2004. Find out the issues of abortion with Democrats. Easy enough to do. I found a whole bunch of stuff, by the way, on neocons. I found a whole bunch of stuff on George Bush. It was part of the dossier. They told me, you can't ever talk about this, Jeremiah, or you'll never have a job in New Jersey politics the rest of your life. That night, I go and I write a letter to the biggest newspaper in the state of New Jersey with my name on it. And I say exactly what I believed. I never had a job in New Jersey politics for the rest of my life. Never. You don't know who you're talking to. You do not know who you are talking to. And I've been doing that my whole life, buddy. I'm not changing now. You got the wrong guy. You got the wrong guy. Oh, man. Tragic. Unfortunate. At least do Tim a favor. At least talk to Tim. Tell Tim what you think. And let Tim tell me what he thinks. If he says, look, you can't talk about it anymore. You can't talk about it anymore. If that's the case, I'd say, auf Wiedersehen. Because this is important to me. I just got done talking about the reasons why this stuff is important to me. And if nobody can come to me with arguments, and thus far, they can't. They just don't like me. They don't like my personality. Cut it out, man. You're honestly better than this, dude. The pride emanating here is intense. The pride in what? Standing for your convictions even when you're threatened to not have a job or money? That's weird. That's weird. What would you call it if I did that? Got some weirdos in here. You got some real weirdos. And I hope I'm not mistaking, Ignatian, what you're saying. I hope you're not. Yeah. So many decisions. And I hope, look, to all of you listening, I hope, if nothing else, that you see, that you can trust, that what I'm saying, I truly believe on the spot. On the spot. And this wouldn't just affect the money, too. I know who Phil is. We've talked. It wouldn't just affect that. It's a tragic thing, in fact, that even happened, that this even is being talked about in this place. That's you know what? I sit there and say, man, that's really, really a sad display. But I'm also not going to hide it. And so if people want to show where they can trust for sure that somebody is not doing something for money, if you want to know that that person truly, genuinely believes that they're not there for the popularity, they're not there for the views, they're there for the Johnny Q and Sally Sue. You really want that. If you really want that, welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. I hope that Tay Tay's squad gives me some YouTube drama. That's okay. That's okay. At least then they'd be facing what is quite possibly the best argument against them. It's true. It's true. You tackle them on a presuppositional level, you pull the carpet out from under their feet. Divine constitution of the visible church, indefectibility, infallibility, the reductio ad absurdum of dealing with a position that takes ipso facto as the final say that that's just it. It's not a theological opinion. It's like, well, this is just going to be the way it is. There's nothing beyond that. They don't even understand the Pandora's box that they've unleashed. They have no clue. To quote extensively as we have from Leo the 13th on the regulating one's conduct according to the divine constitution of the visible church, every thought, word, and action according to that. Yeah. Same thing with Gregory the Great. Same thing with Vatican I, Father Fenton, Vatican II, you name it. You name it. Easy peasers, man. This is not hard. This is not hard. I've been doing it for a minute. In fact, I was arguing against prominent sedevacantist online when I don't even know if Taylor Marshall even knew what that word was. He was a young little strapping dude. I mean, like a baby face guy. In fact, he might have been watching me. We'll see. All right. I'm grateful for all of you, but I'm done. I'm done with this. And yes, man, Kevin, Jeremiah, it's late. People are drinking crazy juice. Totally, 100%. I'm just concerned they'd slander you across Catholic YouTube and Twitter. Dude, you guys got to know who you're talking to, man. I've been, gone after so many times by so many different groups, right? I've been doxxed numerous times. I think I have on Twitter. At one point, I had a list of all the various groups that have doxxed me before. Yeah, I'm not afraid, man. I don't put my trust in chariots and horsemen. And I'm not afraid of giants, man. Not playing around. I'm standing strong in the ark. I ain't playing around. I'm not the one that's shaking in my boots. I'm not the one burning alive in my pride either. Yeah. All right, everybody. Rachel. Yep. Good night. All right. We are out of here. We are out of here. Yeah. Several thousand people on each live stream. But that might not turn out well. Yeah. I don't mind that at all. You come at me and you have that many people. I don't care. I don't care. I already went after him and I went after Gordon. I was in a spat with Gordon, with Marshall banned me. Gordon, Skojic. That's why I got the pink headphones. Yeah, why are you guys afraid of giants? What are you talking about? Do you believe what you believe about the church or not? Do you believe what you believe about the church or not? Plus, what are they going to do? I'm not even on Twitter. I only go into YouTube to make videos and I walk out. I'm too busy reading books and spending time with my family and loving the church and subjecting myself to the Holy Roman Pontiff and knowing my lane and my pay grade. I'm too busy doing all of those things and trying to live a really mega dope life with my mega hot half Korean wife and our fantastic children. I ain't afraid of rando annons, man. Not afraid. Yeah, but pray for me, though. No, they spam. That's good. They spam and flood this chat. Please do. They don't know how the algorithm works. That's actually good for us. Visibility is perfectly fine. And I can stand my own. Give me a break. Yeah, I'm going over to Telegram right now. So, alrighty, if you want to keep talking, you want to have a conversation, make sure to join us over on Telegram. We're going to go ahead right now. Let's go to the ending. I appreciate all of you. Again. And look, maybe a lot of people who've never been in public life and never been on talk radio or never been involved in lobbying, where you're in the political arena and stuff like that, they don't really understand. I think there's a legitimate fear that a lot of people have. And I'm telling you right now, don't be afraid. Fear not. If you're standing up for what's right and you're doing the right thing, are you going to take bumps and bruises? Yes. Are those crosses that you're willing to bear? You better believe it. And why am I willing to bear it? Because I know where I'm going. I've got a vision of my own. And I'm not grabbing ankles for people because I want money. That's why. Because that girl on the screen right there, she blazed a trail for me. And that trail is one that I will continue to march forward on until I die. And no matter what, this world's a passing thing. It doesn't affect me, right? I sit there and say, I give it my best all the time. I give it my best to do my all. That's all it is. And yes, Tim Gordon holds the utmost respect for me. Tim Flanders holds the utmost respect for me. Okay? So we've got, you got people on different sides of an equation. David Gray likes me, right? So you got people, but even if they didn't, and even if God didn't come and save the apostolate, you want to know what? I still wouldn't take a knee to mammon. I wouldn't take a knee to people who bash the bride. I would not take a knee to people who slander and malign and calumniate the cross of Christ, our King. Never. Instead, I take it all with a smile on my face. Why? Because we got to keep on smiling, never give up, and memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.